Tasha Williams stood at her bedroom window, watching her husband Kevin load suitcases into the trunk of the car. 22 years of marriage fit into 3 large leather suitcases. He was 47 years old and acting like a boy. She was 45, and here she was, standing alone, watching her whole life fall apart. Kevin didn't look back at the house, even when he slammed the trunk shut. He just got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove out of the driveway. Tasha could have sworn she saw relief on his face. "So it's true," said Letitia Banks, standing in the bedroom doorway. Her voice was quiet, but she sounded tense. "He really left you for Monica," Tasha nodded, unable to speak. Letitia, her neighbor and friend of 15 years, came over and put her arm around her shoulders. "I didn't believe it until the very end," Letitia continued. "Kevin and Monica? I just can't wrap my head around it." Tasha finally turned away from the window. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Do you know what he said to me? That he feels young with her? That she's breathed new life into him?" Tasha's voice trembled. "So he felt dead with me all these years?" Letitia shook her head, her face contorted with anger. "Men his age are all the same. Midlife crisis, gray hair, and a devil in his heart. In a couple of weeks he'll come to his senses and crawl back to you." Tasha moved away from the window and sat down on the edge of the bed. She knew Letitia was wrong. She had seen the look in Kevin's eyes when he looked at Monica. It was the same look he had had 23 years ago when he first saw Tasha. And now Monica, young, vibrant, energetic, was getting that look. 36 years old, almost 10 years younger than me, Tasha said quietly. And I was the one who invited her back when she returned to town. I introduced them to each other again. Monica Johnson had returned to Greenwood 3 months ago after her divorce. She and Tasha had been best friends since college, even though Monica was younger. When Monica called and said she was coming back to her hometown, Tasha was genuinely happy. She arranged a dinner, introduced Monica to her new neighbors, and introduced her to old friends, including her husband, Kevin. "She's always been like that," Letitia remarked, sitting down next to Tasha. "Back in college, all the guys were crazy about her. I remember how she dated 3 guys at the same time, and all 3 thought they were the only one." Tasha shook her head. "No, it's not about Monica. In the end, it was Kevin who made the choice. He was the one who decided to leave me after 22 years of marriage." Letitia took Tasha's hand in hers. At 42, Letitia was single, and often said she envied her friend's stable marriage. Now that envy seemed like bitter irony. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. Tasha took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stood up. "I'll go on living. I have my bakery. My son is in his 3rd year of college, and I have friends." She looked Letitia straight in the eye. "I won't let Kevin and Monica destroy everything I've built." But deep down, Tasha wasn't sure she could keep that promise. Her husband's betrayal was painful enough. Her best friend's betrayal seemed unbearable. That same evening, on the other side of town, Monica Johnson watched Kevin unpack his things in her small house on Ivy Street. She hadn't planned on falling in love with her best friend's husband. It had happened spontaneously, unexpectedly, even for her. "Are you sure you're doing the right thing?" she asked, watching Kevin's methodical movements. At 36, Monica still retained a youthful impulsiveness that contrasted sharply with the measured demeanor of 47-year-old Kevin. He stopped, turned to her, and smiled. The wrinkles around his eyes deepened. "For the first time in many years, I'm sure of what I'm doing, Monica." "But Tasha, she doesn't deserve this." Monica wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to protect herself from the cold, even though the room was warm. Kevin walked over to her and hugged her. He smelled of a familiar cologne, a mixture of sandalwood and cedar. It was a scent that Monica used to associate with Tasha's home, with family dinners and friendly get-togethers. Now that scent belonged to her. I tried, Monica. For 15 years, I tried to get back what Tasha and I had in the beginning. But we became strangers, living under the same roof. His voice sounded tired. With you, I feel alive. For the first time in a long time. Monica pressed herself against his chest. She knew that in a small town like Greenwood, their story had already become the main topic of gossip. She imagined people whispering behind her back, looking at her with disapproval as they passed by. And she knew that Tasha would have the hardest time. I have to talk to her, Monica said, pulling away. Explain. Apologize. Kevin shook his head. Not now. Give her time. Any conversation will only make things worse. Monica nodded, but a voice inside her told her that there might not be time. Something in the air, some intangible tension, told her that a storm was brewing. Detective Andre Foster sat at a table in Mike's cafe and watched the patrons. At 40, he was an experienced police officer who knew that in small towns like Greenwood, the most valuable sources of information were local gossip. And today, the main topic of discussion was the story of Kevin Tash and Monica. Can you believe he just packed his things and left her? Said an elderly woman at the next table to her friend. After all those years of marriage. And that Monica, replied her companion, lowering her voice, but not enough for Andre to hear. She came back to town and immediately stole her best friend's husband. Shameless. Foster took a sip of his coffee, pretending not to be listening. He knew Kevin Williams from work. He was a successful businessman who owned a construction company that was building half of the new buildings in Greenwood. He also knew Tash. Her bakery was famous throughout the city. But Monica Johnson was a new face to him. Hey, Andre. Greenwood Police Chief Warren Mills approached his table. Mind if I join you? Foster gestured for the chief to sit down. The whole town is talking about that love triangle, Mills remarked, nodding toward the neighboring table where two women continued to discuss the scandalous story. I even feel sorry for Tash. She's a lovely woman, always bringing cakes to charity events. Andre nodded. People change, boss, sometimes unexpectedly. Or they show their true colors, Mills grunted. I always thought Kevin was a decent man. And now, he shook his head. Leaving his wife for a woman 9 years younger, classic story. What do you know about Monica Johnson? Andre asked, not hiding his professional interest. Mills shrugged. She grew up here, then moved to the big city. I think she was married, got divorced, and came back. Tasha and Monica were friends in college. He took a sip of coffee and added, she works as a designer or something like that. Andre nodded thoughtfully. He had always been interested in people and their stories, even when it wasn't related to his investigations. And the story of this love triangle didn't seem as simple as it appeared at first glance. I heard Letitia Banks is supporting Tasha now, Mills remarked. They're old friends. Andre knew Letitia, a strict, reserved woman who ran charity projects at the local church and worked as an accountant at City Hall. She always seemed too proper, too perfect, as if she were hiding something behind her flawless facade. Tasha is a strong woman, Andre said. She'll be fine. Mills looked at him with a slight smile. You know, in situations like this, everyone usually suffers, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have to intervene at some point. Andre raised an eyebrow. Are you expecting problems? There are always problems in love triangles, Detective, Mills replied, especially when they involved betrayal, jealousy, and wounded pride. 2 days after Kevin left, Tasha opened her bakery as usual at 7 in the morning. She had no intention of hiding from people or giving the town more reasons to gossip. Yes, her husband had left her for her best friend, but life went on, and the bills weren't going to pay themselves. As expected, Letitia was the first customer. She entered, quietly ringing the doorbell, and headed straight for the counter. How are you? She asked, studying her friend's face intently. Tasha shrugged, continuing to arrange the fresh pastries. Fine. I spoke to my son yesterday and told him about the situation. He promised to come over on the weekend. Letitia nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Did you see them at the supermarket yesterday? They were walking together as if nothing had happened. Tasha stopped, closed her eyes for a moment, then continued her work. No, I didn't, and I don't want to see them. Letitia sat down on a high stool at the counter. I just don't understand how Monica could do that to you after everything you've done for her. Her voice was tinged with barely contained anger. And Kevin, what does he see in her? Yes, she's younger, but enough, Letitia, Tasha interrupted sharply. I don't want to discuss this. Not now, not ever. Letitia fell silent, but her eyes continued to flash. They had been friends with Tasha for many years, and seeing her friend betrayed was unbearable. The doorbell rang again, and Detective Foster entered the bakery. He smiled at both women and approached the counter. Good morning, ladies. I'll have a coffee and one of your famous blueberry muffins, Tasha. Tasha nodded and turned to prepare the order. Detective Foster was a regular customer, and she usually enjoyed exchanging a few words with him. But today, she didn't feel like talking. I hear you've had a difficult week, Andre remarked gently as she placed a cup of coffee and a plate with a muffin in front of him. Tasha met his gaze, and something in his calm brown eyes made her relax. The whole town knows, doesn't it? She smiled bitterly. Andre shrugged. Small town, big news, but you know, people will talk and then forget. It always happens that way. If only, Letitia interjected, some things are never forgotten or forgiven. Andre looked at her, and for a moment he thought he saw something strange, almost frightening, flash in her eyes. But the moment passed, and he was once again looking at his concerned friend. Everything passes, he remarked, taking a sip of his coffee, even the most intense pain. You speak like someone who has been through a lot, Tasha observed. Andre smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. Everyone has their own story of loss and betrayal, Mrs. Williams. He paid, nodded to both women, and headed for the exit. At the door, he turned around. You know, in my line of work, I often see people make irreparable mistakes in moments of intense emotion. Don't let pain control your actions. After he left, Letitia snorted. What did he mean by that? Tasha looked thoughtfully at the door, behind which the detective had disappeared. I don't know, but he's right about one thing. I can't let pain control me. Letitia looked at her friend with concern, and something else that was hard to identify. What are you going to do? Live on, Tasha replied simply. What else is there? Later that day, Monica Johnson sat on the back porch of her house smoking, a habit she had been trying to quit for several years. She could hear Kevin talking on the phone in the living room, probably dealing with some work issues. He was a prominent businessman, a respected man in the town, and now his entire reputation was in jeopardy because of her. A strange feeling of unease had not left Monica since Kevin moved in with her. It was as if someone's invisible eyes were watching them, as if something was looming, something inevitable and terrible. Everything okay? Monica started. Kevin was standing in the doorway, looking at her with concern. Yes, just thinking, she said, stubbing out her cigarette and getting up. Did anyone call from work? Kevin nodded. Problems with the new project. I'll have to go to Augusta tomorrow for a meeting with suppliers. Monica walked over to him and hugged him. You don't regret it? She asked quietly. Leaving her, Kevin hugged her back, his arms warm and strong. No, Monica, I don't regret it, but I'm sorry I hurt her. Monica lifted her head and looked him in the eyes. I saw Tash today. From a distance, she was coming out of her bakery, and you know she looked strong, pulled together. She's always been strong, Kevin nodded. One of the strongest women I've ever known. Monica pulled away and a shadow crossed her face. Sometimes I think we made a terrible mistake, Kevin, that it's all going to end badly. Kevin took her by the shoulders, looking into her eyes. Don't say that. We deserve to be happy, Monica. Both of us. She nodded, but her anxiety remained. And in the darkness of the backyard, she thought she saw a shadow flit between the trees. But when she looked closer, there was no one there. That same evening, Letitia Banks stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the street. From where she stood, she could see Monica's house at the end of the block. The lights were on, and she could make out moving silhouettes. Kevin and Monica together, happy, building a new life on the ruins of the old one. Letitia clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. She had always considered herself a rational person, capable of controlling her emotions. But now a storm was raging inside her that was becoming increasingly difficult to contain. She thought about Tasha, about how she was suffering, even though she was trying not to show it. She thought about Kevin, whom she had known for many years, and who had always seemed like the perfect man to her. Strong, reliable, faithful. The perfect husband for Tasha. The perfect father for their son. The perfect, but not for her. Never for her. And now he had chosen Monica. Young, vibrant, carefree Monica, who always got what she wanted, even if it belonged to someone else. Letitia turned away from the window and walked over to the mirror. At 42, she was still an attractive woman, tall, slim, with smooth dark skin and piercing eyes, but never attractive enough for Kevin Williams. She thought about how Monica had returned to town and immediately found herself the center of attention. How Tasha, kind, naive Tasha, had brought her into her home, introduced her to her husband, and presented her to her friends. And how quickly Monica had charmed Kevin, taken him away, and destroyed her family. It was wrong. It was unfair. And something had to happen to restore the balance. Letitia glanced once more at Monica's house and slowly, as if in a dream, lowered the curtains. The decision came to her suddenly, but with such clarity that it was as if she had always known it. Everything would change, very soon. The first day after Kevin's departure began for Tasha with deafening silence. The spacious house where she had lived most of her life suddenly seemed strange and empty. Tash sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty half of the bed where her husband used to sleep. 2 pillows, 2 nightstands, 2 bathrobes on hooks. Everything still bore witness to the life of 2 people, even though one was gone. The ringing of the phone snapped her out of her stupor. She answered without even looking at the screen. "Mom?" Her son's voice sounded alarmed. "I just talked to Dad. Is it true? Did he go to Aunt Monica's?" Tasha closed her eyes. Jason, their only son, was attending college in another state. She had hoped to tell him herself to find the right words, but Kevin had beaten her to it. "Yes, sweetie, it's true," she replied, trying to sound calm. "I'll be there on the weekend. You can't be alone right now." "Don't interrupt your studies," Tasha objected. "I'm fine, really." But she wasn't fine, and Jason knew it. After the call, Tasha forced herself to get up, take a shower, get dressed, and go to work. The bakery wouldn't run itself, and the pastries wouldn't appear out of thin air. Life went on, even if the world around her was falling apart. That same day, when the town was buzzing with gossip, Letitia stopped by Tasha's bakery before closing time. She silently hugged her friend and helped her wipe down the tables, wash the dishes, and close the register. "Let's go to my place," Letitia suggested. "We can make dinner and watch a movie." "You shouldn't be alone right now," Tasha shook her head. "Thanks, but I'd rather stay home. I need to get used to the new situation." Letitia looked closely at her friend. "You're too calm, you know. That's not normal." "What's normal?" Tasha smiled bitterly. "Cry, scream, break dishes? Would that change anything? Maybe it would make you feel better." Tasha froze, a dark, almost dangerous look flashing in her eyes. "Yao, you know what would make it easier? If they both disappeared from my life, forever." Letitia flinched at her friend's tone, but quickly regained her composure. "That's exactly why you shouldn't be alone. Thoughts like that won't do you any good. Tasha turned away, her shoulders slumping. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'm just tired. But Letitia saw the look in her eyes and wondered what was really going on inside the betrayed woman. Day 2 began with an early trip to Augusta for Kevin. Suppliers were missing deadlines, the project was stalled, and he had to intervene personally. He hadn't slept well, the bed at Monica's house was too soft, unfamiliar, or maybe it was the guilt that washed over him in waves in the early hours of the morning. "Will you be back for dinner?" Monica asked as he was leaving. Kevin froze for a moment, looking at the woman for whom he had turned his whole life upside down. Monica looked incredible in the morning light, fresh, young, with a cloud of dark curls around her beautiful face. "I'll try," he nodded, "but I can't promise anything. Things might take a while." He kissed her and left, feeling the eyes of his neighbors on him. Greenwood was a small town where everyone knew each other, and now the whole town was watching the development of his relationship with Monica, judging, whispering. Today he had to stop by the office before heading to Augusta. He hadn't been there since the day he left Tash. Kevin was afraid of his employees' reaction, many of whom knew his wife and had been to their house for corporate parties. He was right. As soon as he entered the building, the conversation stopped, the glances fell, and the atmosphere became tense. His secretary, Evelyn, an older woman who had worked with him for over 10 years, handed him a folder of documents, avoiding his gaze. "Everything okay?" Kevin asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Yes, Mr. Williams," Evelyn replied dryly. "Everything is ready for the meeting with the suppliers." He nodded and walked into his office, feeling the stares of his employees burning into his back. Kevin never thought his personal life would become the subject of such intense scrutiny. He had always kept his business and home life separate, but now the line had been blurred. His phone vibrated. A message from Monica. "Love you, good luck today." Simple words, but they made him smile. It was worth going through all the difficulties for that. Monica's third day began with an unpleasant phone call. A client had canceled the project she had been working on for the past 2 weeks. The official reason was a budget change. The unofficial one was her reputation in town. "I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, but my wife, you understand this town?" She understood. In a small town where everyone knows each other, reputation means more than professionalism. And her reputation was now in tatters. Homewrecker, traitor, woman who destroyed a strong family. Monica threw the phone on the couch and cursed. This was the second order she had lost in a week. If this continued, she would have to leave town again or find a job where her reputation didn't matter. In the evening, when Kevin returned from Augusta, she told him about the canceled project. "It'll blow over," he said, hugging her. "People will forget, find something new to gossip about." "Not in this town." Monica shook her head. "Nothing is forgotten or forgiven here." "Then we can leave," Kevin suggested. "Start over somewhere else where no one knows us." Monica looked at him in surprise. "You'd give up your business? For me?" "I can start a company anywhere," Kevin shrugged. "But there's only one you." Monica pressed herself against him, feeling a warm wave growing inside her. No one had ever put her first. Not her ex-husband, not her parents, not her friends. And Kevin was willing to give up everything for her. "Let's wait," she said. "Maybe things will work out." But deep down, she knew it would be difficult for them to find peace in Greenwood. There were too many connections, too many stories, too many people who felt it was their duty to take sides in this conflict. Day 4 began with nervous anticipation for Letitia. She sat in her car across from Monica's house, watching Kevin get out and get into his car. As soon as he drove away, Letitia took out her phone and dialed the number. "He just left," she said. "Today is the perfect day to talk." On the other end of the line, Tasha sighed. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Letitia. You need to talk to her, find out the truth, understand what's going on." Letitia spoke quickly, convincingly. You deserve an explanation, Tasha. After a pause, Tasha agreed, and they arranged to meet at Monica's house in an hour. Letitia smiled, started her car, and drove away. She hadn't lied to Tasha. She really did need answers. But Letitia had her own reasons for wanting this meeting. She wanted to see Monica squirm under the intense gaze of the woman she had betrayed. She wanted to watch the confrontation, the pain, the conflict. What Letitia didn't expect was that Tasha wouldn't show up for the meeting. Instead, she called and said she had changed her mind. "I'm not ready to see her," Tasha explained, "and to be honest, I'm not sure I'll ever be ready." Letitia was disappointed, but she didn't let it show. "I understand, dear. It's your decision, and I respect it." Hanging up the phone, she looked at Monica's house with a heavy heart. Her plan hadn't worked, but that didn't mean she was giving up. She had other ideas, other possibilities, and time. 3 more days until the end of the week. Day 5, Letitia, was a day of unexpected guests. Jason arrived unannounced, simply ringing the doorbell and standing on the threshold with a backpack and a determined expression on his face. "I told you I'd come for the weekend," he reminded her, hugging his mother. Tasha couldn't hold back her tears as she held her son close. Tall, slender, so much like his father and his youth. At 21, he was already a grown man, but to her he would always be the little boy she rocked in her arms. "You shouldn't have skipped class," she said, but there was no sternness in her voice. "Professor Johnson, let me take some work home," Jason replied as he walked into the house. "I'll be here until the end of the week." They spent the evening talking. Jason didn't criticize his father directly, but Tasha could see his shoulders tense whenever the conversation turned to Kevin and Monica. "You should file for divorce," he said at one point, "and demand more than half the assets. He has to pay for what he did." Tasha shook her head. "Revenge won't fix anything, sweetie. Yes, I will file for divorce, but not to punish your father. I'm doing it so I can move on?" Jason looked at his mother in surprise. "How can you be so accepting after everything he did?" Tasha thought for a moment. How could she explain that over the years of marriage, love had turned into habit, that she had noticed Kevin's distance long ago but had chosen to ignore the problem, that maybe she was partly to blame? "When you love someone, you want that person to be happy," she finally replied, "even if their happiness doesn't include you." Jason shook his head, not understanding. He was young, passionate, and full of righteous anger. Tasha knew it would take time for him to accept the situation as she had. Day 6, for Kevin and Monica, began with an unexpected encounter. They left the house heading for breakfast at a local cafe and ran into Jason, who was clearly waiting for them. "Jason?" Kevin stopped, looking at his son with concern and love. "I didn't know you were here." "Of course not," Jason replied coldly. "You would have known if you had called to find out how Mom was doing." Kevin sighed. "Son, I understand that you're angry." "No, you don't," Jason interrupted. "You have no idea how I feel." He looked at Monica, who was standing a little way off, as if she wanted the ground to swallow her up. "And you? You were like an aunt to me. I trusted you." Monica took a step forward. "Jason, we never wanted to hurt anyone." "Really?" he sneered bitterly. "You just decided to destroy a family for your own happiness? How noble!" Kevin put his hand on his son's shoulder, but he pulled away. "Let's talk this out," Kevin suggested. "The 3 of us, over breakfast." "I'm not having breakfast with you," Jason snapped. "I came here to tell you one thing. Stay away from Mom. She suffered enough because of you." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Kevin and Monica standing on the sidewalk under the curious glances of passers-by. "He's right, you know," Monica said quietly when they finally got into the car. "We really did destroy a family." Kevin gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "No, Monica. Our marriage to Tasha has been a sham for a long time. We stayed together out of habit for Jason's sake, but he's grown up, and we don't need to pretend anymore." Monica looked at him doubtfully. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just trying to justify what we did?" Kevin didn't answer. He started the car and pulled onto the road, avoiding Monica's gaze. The truth was somewhere in between, and they both knew it. Day 7 began for Letitia with a decision. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at her phone where Tasha's number was open. She could call her, suggest spending the day together, distract her friend from her dark thoughts. But instead, Letitia put her phone down, got up, and went to the window. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft pink tones. It was the 7th day since Kevin left Tashi for Monica. It was a week that changed the lives of everyone involved in this story. Letitia watched the city wake up. Mr. Jenkins went out to get his morning paper. Mrs. Patterson was walking her little dog. It was a normal morning in Greenwood, but for Letitia, this day was not normal. She took a dark blouse and pants out of the closet, got dressed, did her hair, and put on some light makeup. All her movements were calm and measured, as if she were performing a familiar ritual. Only her eyes betrayed a strange expression, determination mixed with something dark, almost frightening. Letitia left the house, got into her car, and drove off. Not to Tasha's, as one might have expected, and not to work. She drove to Monica's house. That same day, later in the evening, Tasha and Jason were sitting in the living room discussing the details of their upcoming divorce. They had already contacted a lawyer who promised to prepare all the necessary documents by the beginning of the following week. "Are you sure you don't want to ask for more?" Jason asked, looking at the numbers in his notebook. "Half the house, half the business, alimony." "I want justice, not revenge," Tasha repeated. "I have my own bakery. I can support myself." Jason shook his head, but didn't argue. He respected his mother's decision, even if he didn't fully understand it. The phone rang. It was Letitia. "Hi," Tasha answered. "I'm sorry, I can't meet today, Jason and I." "Tasha," Letitia's voice sounded strange, tense. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Tasha frowned. "Did something happen? I can't talk on the phone." "Come over to my place, alone." After a pause, Letitia added, "It's about Kevin and Monica." Tasha felt a chill run down her spine. "Okay," she replied after a pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hanging up, she turned to Jason, who looked concerned. I need to go to Letitia's," she said. "It won't take long." "Do you want me to come with you?" Jason offered. Tasha shook her head. "No, it's okay. Stay home and order pizza for dinner. I'll be back soon." She kissed her son on the cheek and left, feeling strangely uneasy. Something in Letitia's voice made her nervous. Meanwhile, Kevin was returning home after a long day at work. The last week had been emotionally draining. Moving in with Monica, the condemnation of his colleagues, his son's coldness. But despite all the difficulties, he did not regret his decision. With Monica, he felt alive, real, happy for the first time in many years. Dawn in Greenwood was foggy and cold. Mrs. Patterson was walking her terrier, as she did every morning at 6 o'clock. The dog pulled on the leash toward Monica Johnson's house, ignoring its owner's commands. Suddenly, the terrier lunged forward with such force that the elderly woman barely kept her balance. "Baxter! No!" Mrs. Patterson exclaimed. But the dog was already making its way through the hedge into Monica's backyard. Mrs. Patterson followed him irritably, muttering something under her breath about ill-mannered animals. But all thoughts of the disobedient dog vanished when she turned the corner of the house. Monica Johnson was lying on the dew-covered grass in the backyard. Her dark hair was scattered across the ground, and a deep wound was bleeding on her neck. Her eyes were wide open and staring lifelessly at the gray morning sky. Mrs. Patterson screamed. Detective Andre Foster arrived at the crime scene 20 minutes after the call to the station. By that time, The area had been cordoned off with yellow police tape, and forensic technicians were photographing the body and the surrounding area. "What do we have?" Foster asked, approaching the patrol officer guarding the entrance to the yard. "Monica Johnson found dead in the backyard of her home around 6 this morning. Preliminary cause of death is a slit throat. The body was discovered by Mrs. Patterson, a neighbor, while she was walking her dog," the officer reported. Foster nodded and walked over to where the body lay. The medical examiner, Dr. Raymond, was already working nearby. "Time of death?" Foster asked, crouching down. "Between 9 p.m. and midnight, judging by rigor mortis and body temperature," Raymond replied without looking up from his work. "The cause of death was blood loss from a deep cut to the carotid artery. The murder weapon was something sharp, possibly a kitchen knife." Foster examined the body. Monica was dressed in sweatpants and a sweater. There were no signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds on her hands. "She knew her attacker," he remarked. "She didn't expect to be attacked." "It looks that way," Raymond agreed. "The blow was delivered from behind, from right to left. The killer was probably right-handed. Any signs of forced entry?" Foster stood up and looked around the house. "None," replied the technician who had joined him. "All the doors and windows were locked from the inside. The victim must have gone out into the backyard herself." Foster nodded thoughtfully. "So Monica trusted her killer enough to willingly go out into the unlit yard with him, or she was lured out by deception." "Where's her partner, Kevin Williams?" "In the house. Officer Johnson is working with him now." Foster headed for the house. Inside, everything looked normal. A table set for two, dinner prepared, a bottle of wine. Everything suggested that Monica had been waiting for Kevin to come home and had planned a romantic evening. Kevin Williams sat on the sofa in the living room, pale and shaken. Officer Johnson sat nearby, ready to take notes. "Detective Foster," Andre introduced himself. "I need to ask you a few questions, Mr. Williams." Kevin looked up, his eyes filled with despair and disbelief. "I don't understand how this could have happened," he said hoarsely. "Who could have done this to Monica?" "That's what we're trying to find out," Foster replied calmly. "Tell us where you were last night." "I worked late. Then I stopped by the store to get some wine. Monica texted me that she had made a surprise for dinner." Kevin's voice faltered. "When I got home around 10, she was nowhere to be found. I thought she might have popped out to the store for something for dinner. I waited for her, then started calling, but her phone was at home. I drove around the neighborhood, then came back and fell asleep on the couch, and in the morning he fell silent, unable to continue." "Did you go out into the yard in the evening or during the night?" "No, I looked for her on the street, but I didn't go into the backyard. It's dark there, the light's broken." Foster watched Kevin closely, assessing his reaction and his words. No, this man was truly shocked and devastated. But that didn't mean he couldn't be involved in the murder. "I'll need to check your alibi. Did anyone see you at the office or at the store?" "There was a cleaning lady and a night guard at the office. At the store there was the cashier, of course. I should have the receipt for the wine." Foster nodded. "The usual procedure. Check alibis, look for witnesses, but it was already clear that this murder was not accidental. Someone had deliberately killed Monica Johnson, and that someone was someone she knew." "Can I call Tasha?" Kevin asked suddenly. "She needs to know." "And Jason, my son?" "We've already sent an officer to Mrs. Williams," Foster replied. "But I would recommend refraining from personal contact until all the facts are clear." Kevin looked at the detective in confusion. "You don't think Tasha could have—" "No, that's impossible?" Foster didn't answer. He'd seen worse in his career. An abandoned wife who found out her husband was cheating on her with her best friend was a likely suspect, especially if she still loved her husband. By noon, Foster was already at the station, drawing up an investigation plan. Photos of the main figures in the case hung on the board. Monica Johnson, Kevin Williams, Tasha Williams, Letitia Banks. They were all connected, and one of them was hiding the truth. Kevin's alibi was confirmed. Surveillance cameras in the office building recorded him leaving at 9:15 p.m. The cashier at the store remembered that Kevin had bought expensive wine around 10 p.m. The medical examiner determined the time of death to be between 9:30 and 10:23 p.m. Technicians found no signs of forced entry and no fingerprints other than those belonging to Monica and Kevin. The murder weapon, believed to be a sharp kitchen knife, was never found. Foster decided to start with Tasha Williams. She had the most obvious motive: jealousy and pain from betrayal. But did she have an alibi for the night of the murder? Tash sat in the interrogation room looking calm but exhausted. When Foster entered, she looked up at him. "Detective, I answered all your officer's questions. I was at home with my son Jason all evening. We were discussing the details of our upcoming divorce." "Yes, we've already confirmed your alibi with your son," Foster nodded. "But there's one thing that interests me. Letitia Banks called you last night. What was that call about?" Tasha frowned. "Yes, Letitia called around 8 o'clock. She said she needed to talk to me urgently about something important concerning Kevin and Monica. She asked me to come over, but I didn't go." "Why not?" "Jason and I were discussing important matters, and to be honest, I was tired of the drama. I didn't want to hear any more gossip or speculation." Foster looked at Tasha intently. Something in her tone made him wary. "Did you call her back later?" "Yes, around 9 o'clock. But she didn't answer. I thought she was upset. Letitia is very emotional." "When was the last time you saw Letitia?" "She stopped by my bakery the day before yesterday. We talked about the situation. She's been very supportive of me throughout this whole thing." Foster nodded, making notes in his notebook. "How would you describe Letitia's relationship with Kevin and Monica?" Tasha thought for a moment. "She always had a good relationship with Kevin. She was often at our house. The four of us would go out to dinner or to the movies. We were like two couples, even though Letitia is single. With Monica?" She paused. "They knew each other from college, but I wouldn't say they were close. When Monica came back to town, Letitia was very happy and helped her get settled. But after Kevin left me, for Monica, Letitia's attitude toward her changed dramatically. She started calling her a traitor." "A traitor?" Foster asked. "Why is that? Wasn't Kevin the one who betrayed you first?" Tasha smiled bitterly. "In Letitia's eyes, women should always support each other. Men can make mistakes. They can be forgiven. But a woman who steals her friend's husband, that's unforgivable." Foster made another note. Letitia Banks had called Tasha that evening, possibly trying to establish an alibi. But where was she really? And what was her relationship with Kevin really like? After talking to Tasha, Detective Foster drove to Letitia Banks' house. She opened the door looking impeccable as always. A simple dress, perfect hair, subtle makeup. "Detective Foster," she nodded. "I assume you're here about the terrible tragedy involving Monica. Come in." Letitia's house was as immaculate as she was. Austere furniture, perfect order, not a single thing out of place. "Miss Banks, where were you last night between 8 and 11? "At home, of course. I was working on financial reports for the city council, then watching TV. "Can anyone confirm your alibi?" Letitia narrowed her eyes. "I live alone, Detective. So no one can confirm that I was home." "You called Tasha Williams around 8 o'clock last night?" "Yes, I wanted her to come over. I needed to talk to her." "About what?" Letitia looked away. "Personal stuff, how to deal with a situation. I was worried about her." "And it was so urgent that you insisted on meeting her right away?" "Yes," Letitia replied firmly. "Tasha is my best friend. She needed support." Foster watched her face closely, noting the slight twitch of her left eyelid, a sign of nervousness she was trying to hide. "What do you know about Monica Johnson?" Letitia pursed her lips. "We went to college together. She was always colorful. She knew how to get men's attention. When she came back to town, I was happy for her, just like Tasha. But then her voice faltered. She destroyed Tasha's family. She stole her husband. That's unforgivable. Were you angry with her for that? Of course I was angry, Letitia exclaimed, like any normal person would be. But that doesn't mean I wanted her dead. What about your relationship with Kevin Williams? For a moment, something like panic flashed in Letitia's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. We were friends, good friends. Just friends? What do you mean, detective? Did you ever have romantic feelings for Mr. Williams? Letitia paled. That's ridiculous. Kevin is my best friend's husband, was her husband. But Foster could see he had hit a nerve. Now he needed to dig deeper. He decided to approach it from a different angle. Tell me again about your phone call to Tasha. You said it was about Kevin and Monica. What exactly did you want to tell her? Letitia hesitated. I thought Monica was going to leave town again and take Kevin with her. Where did you get that information? I heard her talking about it on the phone in a cafe. And it was important enough that you insisted on meeting with Tasha immediately. Yes, Tasha needed to know that Monica wasn't just destroying her family. She was going to take Kevin out of town, possibly for good. That would mean Jason would lose not only his family, but also the chance to see his father. Foster made a note. The story sounded plausible, but something didn't add up. Miss Banks, I'll need to check your phone and bank transactions for the last week. I hope you don't mind? Letitia tensed. You need a warrant for that, don't you? Not necessarily if you agreed to voluntarily assist the investigation. After a long pause, Letitia agreed. Foster thanked her and left, feeling that he was getting closer to the truth. Now he needed to find proof. The next 2 days were filled with intense work. Foster and his team checked alibis, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed the evidence they had gathered. It was confirmed that Tasha had indeed been at home with her son all evening. Neighbors had seen the lights on in their house, and a delivery service had brought them pizza around 8 p.m. Kevin, as shown by surveillance cameras and witness statements, had worked late into the evening, then stopped by the store for wine and returned home. But with Letitia, things were more complicated. Her phone showed that she had indeed called Tasha around 8 o'clock in the evening, but after that, the phone was turned off until 10 o'clock. Bank transactions showed nothing suspicious. However, when examining her car, technicians found microscopic traces of blood on the driver's seat mat. Preliminary analysis showed that the blood type matched Monica's. On the third day of the investigation, Foster called Letitia back to the station. This time, she didn't seem as confident as before. Miss Banks, we found traces of blood in your car. The blood type matches Monica Johnson's. Letitia turned pale. That's impossible. I didn't. We also have surveillance footage. Your car was spotted near Monica's house on the night of the murder around 9 o'clock. Foster was deliberately bluffing, but he watched Letitia's reaction. She clenched her hands into fists, her knuckles turning white. You don't understand, she began, but fell silent. What don't I understand, Miss Banks? Letitia was silent for a long time, staring into space. Then she slowly raised her eyes to the detective. I loved him, she said quietly. I always have. From the moment Tasha introduced us many years ago. But he chose her. I accepted it. We became friends, good friends. I was there for them all these years. I saw their marriage slowly die, saw them drift apart. Foster listened silently, letting her speak. When Monica came back to town, I immediately saw the way Kevin looked at her, with admiration, with desire, the way he never looked at me, and I knew it was only a matter of time. Letitia sighed deeply. When he left Tasha, I thought I could handle it. I supported Tasha, comforted her, but inside I was boiling. Why did he choose Monica and not me? What was so special about her? And you decided to kill her, Foster said quietly. Letitia shook her head. No, I didn't plan it. I just wanted to talk to her, explain how much pain she had caused Tash. But that evening, her voice trembled. I drove to her house. I knew Kevin was working late. He always did at the end of the quarter. Monica opened the door and invited me in. She was cooking dinner for him, setting the table. She looked so happy. Letitia paused, gathering her thoughts. We talked. I asked her if she really loved him. She said yes, and that they might leave town, start over somewhere where they wouldn't be judged. And then I realized that she hadn't just taken him away from Tasha. She was going to take him away forever. And I lost control. What happened next? We were in the kitchen. She was cooking something, and there was a knife on the table. I took it. I don't remember how. She turned her back to me, saying something about a new life. And Letitia closed her eyes. I didn't want her to scream, so I stabbed her in the throat, like I'd seen in the movies. She didn't even have time to realize what was happening. And then she fell. There was blood everywhere. I panicked and dragged her out into the yard. I thought maybe they'd find her later and decide it was a random mugger or something like that. And the knife? I took it with me. On the way home, I threw it into the river from a bridge. Foster looked closely at Letitia. There was no remorse in her eyes, only exhaustion, and a strange relief at no longer having to hide the truth. You understand that I have to arrest you for the murder of Monica Johnson? Letitia nodded. I knew this day would come, from the moment I saw the blood on my hands. While the officers processed the arrest, Foster thought about the strange irony of the story. Letitia, who had always been there, always supportive, always loving, in the shadows, unnoticed, her love for Kevin had turned into an obsession that ultimately led to tragedy. The next day, Foster visited Tasha to tell her the news. She was sitting in her bakery, tired and haggard. Letitia, she asked when Foster told her about the confession. That's impossible. She would never, she confessed, Tasha, and we have proof. Foster gently placed his hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry. Tasha shook her head, unable to believe that the woman she considered her best friend was capable of such a thing. She was always there for me, supporting me, comforting me, and all this time. She loved your husband, Foster finished. Perhaps for many years. Tasha covered her face with her hands. All those years of friendship, trust, and candid conversations, all of it had been a lie. Letitia had listened to her complaints about her marriage, supported her during difficult times, and inside, it turned out she had been harboring an obsessive love for Kevin. How could I not have noticed? Tasha whispered. We see what we want to see, Foster replied, and we're usually the last to notice the betrayal of those we trust the most. Later that day, Foster spoke with Kevin Williams. He was still in shock, but now his grief was compounded by the realization of the terrible truth. Letitia, he repeated, as Tasha had done before. Did she really? Yes, Mr. Williams. She confessed to the murder of Monica Johnson. But why? We were friends. She loved you, Foster replied simply, and she couldn't accept that you chose another woman, not her and not Tasha. Kevin looked devastated. I never thought. I never suspected. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us, Foster remarked, especially when we're focused on our own desires and needs. He left Kevin alone with his thoughts and returned to the station. The case was solved, the killer had confessed, but Foster knew that for everyone involved in this drama, the real reckoning was just beginning. Tasha had lost her husband and her best friend. Kevin had lost the woman he loved and would have to live with the knowledge that his choices had led to tragedy. And Letitia had lost everything, her freedom, her dignity, and even the illusion of love that had sustained her all these years. The price of betrayal had been too high for everyone.